Hey guys, James here and welcome back to my channel. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season. It is now a new year. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you guys about which cars I am most excited to drive this year. It's not an objective list, right? This is just a list of what I happen to be most excited about. So sit tight for that, and then at the end, I'm gonna tell you about some cars that I'm not so excited about. First off, the Nissan Z. It's a tried and true, time-tested formula, right? A small two-seater with a big ol' engine and some awesome looks. Starting around 40 grand, this thing is gonna come with 400 horsepower, 350 pound-feet of torque from a 3-liter twin-turbo V6. The new Z has a cleaned-up look that's both kind of retro, but also kind of stoically futuristic. I love those taillights. I mean, just take a look. They're so good. And not only is the Nissan Z a throwback for Nissan sports cars, it's also a throwback for me personally. My first car was a 2003 Infiniti G35 with a 6-speed manual, 3.5-liter VQ Series V6 that made that wonderfully iconic sound, and the Brembo brake package. It's got a special place in my heart, so I am super excited for the new Nissan Z. Next up is the next generation Mazda 6. I will say up front that it's a little unclear whether Mazda is going to manage to get this thing out before the end of the year, but it looks like they're really trying. We'll call it fair game for this video. So you might be wondering at this point, James, why on earth are you excited about a mid-size family sedan? Well, I'll tell you why. The new Mazda 6 is going to be built on a rear-wheel drive platform, and it's going to come with inline 6 power. And for any of you who grew up wanting and lusting after the BMWs of the early 2000s, you know exactly why that combination is so exciting. That's why the new Mazda 6 has got me so excited about what Mazda has in store for all of us. Next up is the new Porsche 911 GT3. Most of my car buddies prefer the Cayman and the Boxster. They love that mid-engine balance and the way that it makes it so easy to drive hard on the track. I happen to fall into the camp that loves the 911. I love the fact that the engine is slung out behind the rear axle, and that really strange rear heavy balance makes the 911 behave in ways that cars probably shouldn't. And of course the electronics will kind of keep you safe these days, but I love those hints of that weird balance in the 911. And so that is one of the cars I am most excited to get my hands on in 2022. Next up, we've got the Mazda MX-30 with the range extender. Okay, we've got 2 Mazdas on this list. Does that make me a fanboy? Maybe. But nonetheless, I am excited about the MX-30 with the range extender. One of our household vehicles is a Mazda CX-30, and I love that car. It's the right size, it handles pretty well, it's like a budget Porsche Macan. So to me, the prospect of electrifying that vehicle is really, really cool. And in fact, I think that the MX-30 is even more evidence that Mazda is trying to go after what BMW has done in the past 20 years. I mean, just think about it. The MX-30 is basically Mazda's BMW i3. Approximately 100 miles of EV range, an available range extender, and backwards rear doors. Because the CX-30 has been such an awesome daily driver for my household, I'm just excited to drive this electrified version and see what it's all about. And while we're on the topic of electrified vehicles, let's talk about the next item on my list, and that is the Aptera. And yes, I am very aware that A, Aptera is not a car, it's actually a 3-wheeler like a Polaris Slingshot or a Vanderhall Venice, and B, Aptera might not make it to market this year or possibly ever because it is a tiny little startup, and we'll see what happens. But if they do get it to market this year as they are planning, I'm really excited about that vehicle. I like the Aptera for 2 reasons, and the first is that it's just so weird, right? It just kind of tickles the nerd in me to look at this thing that looks like a spaceship and then, you know, hopefully drive it this year. And secondly, I think the Aptera represents something really cool, which is the prospect of a future where commuting might be done with 0 fuel at all. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the Aptera will be an electric vehicle that is so efficient that it promises to run on solar energy alone if you live in a climate that has kind of a decent amount of sunlight throughout the year. As a car enthusiast who also cares about the environment, I don't think that, you know, we need to rush towards a future where there are no fossil fuels whatsoever. I mean, there's something visceral and wonderful about driving like a big old V8 like in this car, or say like a screaming flat 6, or just like a, you know, a sonorous V12. But I think that regular commuting for most regular folks who couldn't care less how their car gets around, I think that efficient vehicles that use as little fuel as possible should be the norm. So those are the cars that I am most excited to drive this year. Let's now talk about two cars that I'm not so excited to drive. And the first one is the Acura Integra. Yep, it's the new Acura that everyone seems to love to hate. The problem with the Integra is that it's such a huge car, right? It's so long, and what that means is that it no longer exudes the kind of youthful character of the mid-90s to late 90s Acura Integras, as well as the RSX that came after it. It's going to be really difficult for Acura's engineers to make the new Integra handle with any kind of real athleticism or agility. So I'm just not hopeful for it, and it doesn't look good, so, you know, not excited. And finally, the BMW iX. Now, in recent years, BMW has been kind of hit or miss with the driving experience of their non-M cars. In particular, the non-M versions of BMW SUVs, or SAVs if they're still using that terminology, are just these big like couches on wheels. And because the iX is meant to be an electrified cousin of the BMW X5, I mean, they're not the same platform, but they're meant to occupy a similar kind of niche. I don't have high hopes for the way it's going to drive. To add on top of that, the looks are just, they make me so mad because they remind me of how far from grace BMW has fallen compared to about 20 years ago. I mean, just look at it, or don't if you want to save your retinas, but it's bulgy in the wrong places, a bit like a first generation Nissan Leaf. And then it's like pinched in the face and in the tailgate, and it's just, the proportions are wrong, the details are wrong, it's trying too hard, it's a mess. And so, because I'm not particularly hopeful about the driving experience and the looks make me mad, I'm just not that excited about the iX. But I don't want to end this video on a downer, and so I will say this. As I was brainstorming for this video and kind of preparing my notes, you know, it was actually remarkable how many cars I am really excited to drive. And it was really hard to kind of narrow down the list. We've just got so many incredible cars on the horizon that, you know, it's going to be a great year, guys. And now I think it's time to wrap up this video. But before you go, I would love to hear from you. So leave a comment down below. Let me know what car or cars you're most excited to drive this year, or maybe some cars that you're not so excited about. I would love to hear your thoughts. I want to see what gets your pulse going. Thank you guys so much for watching until the end of this video. And if you are one of my 98% of viewers who are not yet subscribed, consider hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the videos I have coming out on my channel. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.